I'm so excited to welcome everybody to the second of our webinars that we're doing through our Nature's Notebook series, where we're just trying to put really high quality, amazing information out there to the world from experts on different subjects. Izzy is an absolutely fabulous nutritional therapist, naturopath, herbalist, and you've just a massive wealth of knowledge. Always happy to share the work that we've been doing together on our blends. Has been just amazing. All the different levels that you're looking at the herbs is so lovely and refreshing and inspiring. I know that you have in general specialized in women's health and hormone balancing, so this is home territory for you, and I can't wait to learn. I can't wait for your presentation. So over to you.
Thank you so much, Sonia. Thank you for your lovely introduction, and hello everyone, and thank you so much for joining. Just to let you know, I can't see the chat, but if you want to type into the chat, Sonia will have it all covered so we can do questions at the end. But I was going to ask people sort of whether they had anything specific that they were looking to get out of this presentation. So please feel free to type that in whilst I do a quick introduction. Then Sonia, if we could hop on and maybe just see whether anyone had any specific comments, or if not, I'll jump right through. But yeah, please feel free to let me know about yourself. But I will do a quick introduction whilst we do that. So as Sonia said, I'm a nutritional therapist, naturopath, herbalist, kinesiologist. Basically, what that means is that I am into natural medicine, which is obviously why I love Hello Wellness, because they're providing beautiful herbs for people. And I think the great thing about herbal medicine is that it is sustainable. We get in touch with our environment when we use it for healing. It's very accessible, so we're working with herbs that grow around us, that we could go out into the park and pick, or we could grow ourselves in our gardens, or we could even get them in the supermarket. So herbal medicine, natural medicine tends to be very affordable as well. And of course, when we're on this journey connecting with nature, then we're healing not just ourselves, getting the really generosity of nature to help our bodies, but we're also helping our environment. So this is really what I'm passionate about, and it works so well in women's health, which is why it's sort of my specialism. So I love helping women support their hormones, and of course teaching at the same time, because this is a journey that we're on. This is, we're trying out different things, we're learning, we're listening to our body, and it's a lifelong journey, the healing thing, what I love about it. We can never get bored doing it. So if you do want to know more, there's my website, izzyseadon.com. I've got a Substack, and sometimes I post on Instagram. So I just want to see, Sonia, was there anything in the chat, anything anyone wanted to particularly learn about?
So we just have one comment so far from the lovely Caroline, who is she works in menopause, so she supports women that are going through menopause. So she's interested to know about herbs that might help to support women who are experiencing very heavy bleeding, and I guess that would be sort of perimenopause, or mostly, but that's the only question that we've had so far.
Well, Caroline, that's perfect, because we are going to be talking about heavy bleeding. So we're in the right place. So this is the thing, I'm going to be focusing on, for this webinar in particular, the heavy bleeding and also period pain. So we've called the presentation When Periods Take Over. So this is really, really big topic. So actually 96% of women in the UK have experienced period pain at some point in their lives. So I'm guessing everyone on this call probably can relate to period pain, but obviously the grades of period pain can sort of really go from minor cramping to severe, needing hospitalization even. I've had clients that will be hospitalized because it's been so severe during their period, which is just, an unsustainable way if you think about this is happening every month. And of course, similar thing, 91% of women have experienced severe bleeding. So again, this can range from slightly heavier period than usual to, again, hospitalization actually when the bleeding is so severe. So this is something that when we think about the fact that we have about 500 menstrual cycles during our life, we can actually spend sort of over 3 years in severe pain and worrying about how we're managing our periods, which is why this is always going to be a really big, important issue that we can get to grips with to support, not just ourselves, but also the people around us, because I'm sure even if we can't relate to one or any of the symptoms, we definitely will have people who are close to us that can. And I think what's really, really concerning is one of the statistics from the survey said that over half of the women actually felt that their healthcare professional had failed to take their problems seriously. So we're in a society where the support is there, but it's quite hard to necessarily find because it's going to be reliant on sort of who you have access to. And we obviously have some fabulous people who are trying to help women, but then some people maybe more around just recommending sort of the contraceptive pill, and that's sort of the only answer, which I know many women don't want to just use as a way to manage their periods. So this is the thing. This is really, really important topic to get to grips with. And finally on that, what comes around the period? We have mental health challenges, depression, anxiety, mood, all these things that could be happening to women once a month. And that is the crazy thing, because they're monthly. So how can we think about what we're going to do about this? So this is why I'm loving Sonia inviting me to talk about this, because what I get to do is share with you what could be going on. So we'll be diving into just sort of period health 101. Then we'll be thinking about, okay, why is this happening? So I'll be talking about sort of our hormones and other signs and symptoms that we can look for to understand what is going on around having these heavy, painful periods. And then, of course, we're going to get to our natural solutions. So what can we do to address actually, the root cause of why we're feeling like we're feeling? And then finally, we'll have a Q&A. So there's so much to cover, actually. So I've probably spent too long in the introduction already. So I'm going to dive right in. Okay, so period pain. Quick 101. So the scientific term is dysmenorrhea. And we have heavy bleeding or menorrhagia. So this is defined as needing to change sanitary products every 3 hours or bleeding for more than 7 days. This is essentially what we'll read about in terms of the definitions. But what actually would be why we're getting these symptoms? So, period pain. The common understanding of primary dysmenorrhea, so primary period pain, would be that, I should have actually done a little diagram of the uterus, but we have these hormone-like chemicals which will stimulate your uterine muscle to contract. So this is essentially what will happen in your luteal phase. You're leading up to your actual bleed, and then your uterine muscle will start to contract to shed the lining after the endometrial lining has been thickened. So this is basically when you'll start bleeding. But these prostaglandins, which are stimulating the contraction of the uterine muscle, if you've got too many of them, this is sort of what they understand is why we have period pain. Now, so I'll be talking a bit about how we can think about approaching sort of prostaglandins when we get to the solutions. But I'm not going to spend too long on them because there's also going to be a lot of other things that are happening. It's never just one thing, unfortunately, when it comes to health. So the other thing that's interesting to note is that a lot of women, particularly around sort of perimenopause, can start to see histamine type issues. And I think we very much associate histamine with those allergic type reactions, such as sneezing, watery eyes, itching of the skin. But we do have histamine receptors sort of all over our body, including our nervous system. And actually high histamine can also cause pain. And what tends to happen, why it tends to sort of increase around perimenopause, is that estrogen will start to increase. So estrogen, which I'll talk about a bit later, will increase our histamine levels, and histamine levels can increase estrogen. So we've got this vicious histamine estrogen cycle going on. And so this is what we can also see as one of the issues around period pain. And then finally, what we start to think about around secondary period pain this is when the period pain is going to be caused by something maybe more structural, some like underlying condition, potentially things like endometriosis, fibroids, even pelvic inflammatory disease. So this usually, if you've had period pain on a regular basis, hopefully you would be sort of referred for things like pelvic ultrasounds, and then they can sort of then be diagnosed by taking a look around, whether it's sort of a laparoscopy and things like that, to actually see what is happening in that area. So this is, of course, like a really, really common cause of period pain, things like endometriosis, which is sort of a super big issue in itself. So then taking a look at heavy bleeding. So a bit like our menstrual pain, there are going to be lots of reasons and causes why we might have our heavy periods. So high estrogen levels, I mentioned them around histamine causing period pain. High estrogen actually, estrogen itself is very building. So what we see is that it can thicken and really build the endometrial lining if we have a lot of estrogen. So then we're going to have a really thick building levels of endometrial lining to shed. So estrogen is also, when we think of building, we also start to think of development of like clots and cysts. So this is why, again, fibroids very much linked to high estrogen. So I will be talking a lot about estrogen in itself. But of course, yeah, going back to endometriosis, fibroids, adenomyosis, these are also going to be sort of causes of heavy periods. Iron deficiency is a very interesting one, because actually heavy periods can obviously deplete us of iron, but then it can become a bit of a vicious cycle, because the more depleted of iron we get, we can actually have heavier and heavier periods. The thyroid, so I'll be talking a bit about the thyroid. So this is our lovely master gland round about here, which actually is the sort of the master controller of our endocrine system. So when our thyroid has issues, then this is going to impact the rest of our body, but also very much sort of our reproductive hormones as well. Some women will see an increase in heavy periods when they've got something like the copper IUD, but very, very important, there are certain sort of disorders and diseases that can also cause heavy bleeding. So this is definitely something, again, you might want to look into, or definitely look into, to rule out things like sort of clotting and coagulation disorders like von Willebrand disease. So this can be actually, relatively common cause of heavy bleeding. Of course, uterine cancers, liver diseases, infections, all that good stuff. So yeah, this can be an indication of something more severe as well going on with our health. So this is the important thing. It's when we've got that information, we can start probing and getting those answers. So I sort of mentioned sort of what we could say the pathological causes. So, but let's think about actually, why would these things happen in the first place? So the first thing I wanted to do is to start with our hormones. So essentially, hormones they're chemical messengers that they're going to be controlling and regulating activities in the body. So we have loads of different types of hormones, thinking about insulin or adrenaline, serotonin, these ones that we've all heard of. And then we have our sex hormones. And they're so-called sex hormones because they're going to play a very essential role in reproduction. So we have our androgens, things like testosterone. We have our estrogens. The estrogen I'm going to be referencing is estradiol, but let's just call it estrogen for the ease of not getting bogged into the details, and also progesterone. So these are made in our ovaries, if we're a man, in our testes, in the adrenal glands, or they might sometimes be converted in tissue like the fat tissue. That can happen a lot with estrogen, actually. And so we've probably heard the term hormonal imbalance. And this essentially means that there might be sort of a deficiency in one of these hormones, or there might be an excess of these hormones. So actually what we might start to see is sort of the way that they play a role in our body. It's never just you're low in this, so we add more and then everything's fine, because all our hormones work together in a sort of symphony. And so we tend to see particular patterns. So with high estrogen, we tend to see low progesterone and things like that. So we need to work with them all holistically, which is why I love working with herbal medicine. So just to bit of an introduction to these hormones that I've just mentioned. So estrogen. So I've already been a bit mean about estrogen, saying that it can lead, too much estrogen can lead to heavy, painful periods. This is because it's that feminizing hormone that really switches on, the estradiol switches on in puberty. So it's going to grow breasts, pubic hair, but also it's going to, because it's very growing and building, you know, it can grow our thighs and our butt as well, and it can start to bring bloating, water retention, and thickening the blood. So you can start to, when the blood thickens too much, you can start to get headaches and all that sort of stuff. So excess estrogen can not be the best thing. But obviously, at the same time, you know, we get very energized and inspired, and feeling very confident and sexy when we've got a lot of estrogen. So we think of it as this sort of like feminizing, people call it like that Beyonce hormone. So you're going to be bouncing around, but then when it gets too much, then yes, definitely we can see it leading and manifesting in certain women's health conditions. So then we have estrogen's best friend, progesterone. So progesterone is basically, after we've ovulated, we're going to get sort of a surge of progesterone, and this is going to be more calming. It's going to bring us into more of a grounded state. Hopefully, if we've got enough progesterone, we're going to be quite chilled. It's going to help regulate our sleep. So this is sort of the companion. We need the energy from the estrogen, but we also need the chilledness from the progesterone. But this is where we see an issue, because if women aren't having enough progesterone levels coming up to their period, we see issues like premenstrual syndrome, where we're going to feel really anxious and depressed and miserable because we don't have that calming, nice progesterone to keep us all lovely and balanced. So that's why we love progesterone. Really easy to remember it. Progestation, thinking about pregnancy, progesterone. So progesterone, estrogen is very building. Progesterone is holding. So progesterone will hold in that endometrial tissue and sort of prepare the womb for implantation. And so if there's low progesterone and we're not able to hold in that endometrial lining, then we can see issues, sort of spotting before your periods. That tends to be that low progesterone sign. And of course, you know, if you're sort of looking to have a baby, the progesterone be holding in that pregnancy. That's why it's progestation. So then we're moving on to our thyroid hormones. As I said, they're sort of our master hormones that are going to be managing sort of a lot of the body. So actually, with thyroid imbalances, they can be quite hard to identify because the symptoms can range a lot. But classic ones, if we've not got enough thyroid hormone, we're going to see things like constipation, dry, brittle hair, a loss of hair around the eyebrow, cold hands, cold feet, anxiety. And also what we might start to see is issues around heavy periods, fatigue, infertility as well. Thyroid is really, really key as well for supporting fertility. So here are some of the players there. Then what we also need to think about, so we've covered some of our sex hormones, also our cortisol. So cortisol is produced by our adrenals. Now, I'm sure many of you have heard about adrenal fatigue potentially, and the fact that cortisol is going to be stimulated when we're in a stress response type situation, that sort of classic fight, flight, or even freeze response. So this is why we're always going to have to think about our stress hormones, because when we're in a stressed place, that's our body's going to be in the survival response. So therefore, when it's in the survival response, it's not going to be prioritizing reproduction. So we can see the impact of cortisol on so many aspects of our health, but of course, it's going to play a really, really big role in our menstrual health. So looking at what's happening from a stress perspective is always going to be critical when we're trying to get to the root cause of why we're feeling so rubbish every month. So I mentioned histamine previously when I was talking about period pain. So this is actually a chemical that's released by our immune system. So again, we're starting to bring in other bits of, we've talked about now stress on our nervous system. Now we're thinking about sort of actually our immune system. And so histamine is going to play a role in causing inflammation and allergic responses, but this estrogen histamine connection, we're seeing it more and more, not just actually with period pain, but also things like hot flushes, headaches, brain fog. So actually looking at histamine can be a really interesting one to rule out that that's not playing an issue. And then finally, we'll mention testosterone, because we'd see typically in something like polycystic ovarian syndrome, we would see sort of higher testosterone levels, which can also lead to sort of irregular periods. But of course, we need our testosterone just as men need estrogen. We all have bits of, they all play a role. So yeah, testosterone will help us with developing muscle mass, libido, mood stability. Just again, when we have too much of it, too much testosterone it's a bit of a curse actually, because it can sort of cause you to lose hair where you want it on your head, but then start to grow it where you don't want it, like on your chin and neck, around the nipples, all that sort of stuff. So testosterone and its sort of other androgens that's how we'd see them. Okay, so quickly, I'm going to run through this because I'm just conscious of time. So some of the symptoms, if we're looking at excess estrogen, because I think it's really helpful, because this is when you can start to put together and be like, oh, this rings a bell to me. So as I said, building, so we're going to see weight gain, we might see lower libido, headaches, hot flushes, actually, irritability, mood swings, and fibroids, tender breasts. I shouldn't just read them off, but yeah, you can start to get a picture. So this is like our excess estrogen picture. And this is super common, which I'll talk about later, but the reason why a lot of women can relate to the excess estrogen picture is because it's not necessarily estrogen that our body makes that we're making too much of it. It's actually the interaction of xenoestrogens, xeno meaning foreign estrogens, which are in our environment. Because what has changed in the past, well, coming up to say 100 years, is that we are now exposed to a lot of chemicals that mimic estrogen. They have an estrogen-like effect in the body. So this would be our plastics, pesticides, parabens, fragrances, all these sorts of things, which make our lives a lot easier in the terms of, we like our cleaning products and we like our makeup and our body care, but actually they do have this estrogen effect on the body, which is why excess estrogen is probably going to be the main concern for most people. We're seeing it in men as well, too much estrogen, and of course, yeah, in the tap water. So we do have this estrogen syndrome going on. But then, as I said, the hormones work together. So what you tend to see with high estrogen, you tend to get like a low progesterone as well. So with low progesterone, we can see similar symptoms to high estrogen. But with low progesterone, what we're going to start to see maybe some issues around menstrual cycles. They become a bit irregular, they become a bit shorter. We might see that sort of anxiety because we're not getting that calming influence of progesterone. And again, things like, being cold, progesterone will increase our body temperature. So this is a really good way to check for your progesterone levels, is simply taking your temperature first thing in the morning. We ideally want to be hovering around 36.6 degrees Celsius, maybe above, after we've ovulated. But if we're down in the 36.1234, that can be a sign of low thyroid function, but also low progesterone in our luteal phase. Don't know if that's, yeah, we can go into more detail if you've got questions on that. Okay, so thyroid, I've mentioned some of the symptoms for this. Again, coldness. And what's really interesting, I'm going to talk about this later, is that the coldness, the low progesterone, the low thyroid, this manifests in our womb. And I think we talk energetically sort of in my world around thinking about people that are too hot and too cold. And a lot of women are too cold. And we need a warm womb to really help with that movement of basically our menstrual flow. Because if you think about when things are cold, they start to stagnate. So what we really want is that fresh blood being sent in to actually help things just work really smoothly. So when we warm the womb up, whether it's thinking sort of scientifically in terms of increasing progesterone in our thyroid, but also energetically, this is why sort of a lot of the warming herbs like cinnamon and ginger, so good for our menstrual health, because they just clear that stagnation, get things going again. Okay, low estrogen, I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but on the flip side, post-menopause, then we do start to see some more that dryness, because estrogen is very good for like our skin and all that sort of stuff. So this is when we start to see this sort of more of that contraction. We don't have that sort of juiciness anymore. Testosterone, I mentioned sort of that lovely picture of the thinning head hair, but excess here. Also, testosterone upregulates sebum production. So acne, greasiness, that's very much a testosterone picture. And this testosterone can be upregulated by high sugar. So if we're in that sort of angry picture, then we might want to think about stabilizing our blood sugar. That can actually pull a lot of things back into place. And then finally, is it finally? No, nearly there. Cortisol. So if we have too much cortisol, what's going to be going on? So we might find it difficult to sort of get to sleep because, yeah, ideally we want to be in bed by 10, but we might find ourselves quite tired, but we're still wired. You still like got all your thoughts running around from the day and you actually can't get to bed, so you still stay up later. Now, cortisol also plays a big role in blood sugar balance. We might find ourselves craving sugar, and also because basically cortisol is going to has this interplay with glucose, it can start to dump sugar around our abdomen. So that sort of apple-shaped abdominal circumference, that can be sort of, long-term stress as a result of that. Short-term stress sort of start to get maybe thinner because you're breaking down the protein in your muscles to help with that stress, and then sort of start to dump sugar and then get bigger basically. But yeah, some of these symptoms on here as well. And then finally, high histamine. So obviously we've got a lot of the symptoms around potentially, hives or what was I talking about? So yeah, that sort of allergic diathesis of congestion, all that sort of stuff. But also around histamine, you might see that sort of anxiety, period pain, fatigue, breast tenderness as well. So interesting one. Also, just to note on these slides, I've actually put what we'd be thinking about for each one. So this is black seed, which is a really lovely antihistaminic herb. Okay, so now I've got 15 minutes to go through the solutions, which is probably what everyone wants to know about. So hopefully that just gives you a bit of an idea of some of the things, focusing more on the hormones that can then interact with our menstrual cycle. So what I like to recommend, because we're dealing primarily with the hormones, we've got to start with the liver, because the liver rules the blood in Chinese medicine. The liver, our hormones communicate through the blood, and the liver will also metabolize and excrete. So basically detox the excess hormones. So particularly things like estrogen, we want to detoxify that to get it out of the body so it's not recirculating and causing these excess estrogen symptoms. We also have some conversion of the thyroid hormones in the liver. We also thinking about our blood sugar levels, thinking about the liver. So everything sort of does connect. And the reason I also think it's very critical to start with the liver is because the liver's under so much stress, because we are unfortunately living in a bit of a toxic soup these days, as I mentioned, because of all these new chemicals in our environment. The liver's constantly, it does a great job. It's always going to be working, and it's super powerful, which is why we're not completely on the floor yet. But having said that, it's going to be spending a lot of time detoxing things, and therefore it's not going to have as much time getting to our own hormones. So we don't necessarily need to detox our body. We just need to detox our environment, because then that'll support the body so it's got more resources. So this is why we say, let's just start by trying to clean up our environment. So thinking about, what are we investing our money in? Let's invest our money in the companies that care, the companies that are not going to fill our makeup products, our beauty products full of toxic rubbish, and actually think about, you know, being a bit cleaner with our choices. And this does, if you've got the time, it does save you money because you can start to make your own stuff. I love experimenting with the, you know, apple cider vinegar cleaning products. The house does smell of vinegar, but it's very clean. And so thinking about that sort of stuff. So I'd say a really great resource just to start out would be the Environmental Working Group. So this is a website where you could go in and you can type in your makeup or your shampoo or your shower gel, and it'll give you a rating of how potentially toxic it is. So you can then make the decision yourself, because then you've got the knowledge to see, okay, actually, this is probably not something I want to put on my body every day. So I love that. They also have information, as I said, about cleaning products, about water, about pesticides in food. So I think that's a really fabulous resource to start to get to grips with our environment. And of course, thinking about the things that we're doing on a regular basis. So we're going to be drinking water on a regular basis. Unfortunately, our general tap water does not get cleaned of everything that goes in it. So we will find residues of pharmaceutical drugs, whether it is the oral contraceptive pill or also other kinds of drugs as well. So we do need to think about making sure our water is as clean as possible. The other thing that we're going to be doing is breathing quite regularly. So I love to get the house plants, those sorts of things, which do help clean the air. And then of course we're going to be eating. So trying to think about how can we make a food choice that is going to be as helpful to our body as possible. So this is when we can also think about bringing in some foods that love the liver. So this is really great to do because there are so many herbs and spices and veggies that the liver really actually supports our liver detoxification processes. So really easy one is something like lemon. People love starting the day on some lemon water. Squeeze the whole lemon, get a bit of peel in there, and then you're starting the day by drinking a lot of water, which is also going to flush the liver, support the kidneys, and you're getting the benefits of the lemon in there. Thinking around, okay, how can I add more of some of the spices to my foods? Because turmeric, there's so much research on this being fabulous for the liver, also rosemary. So what I really like to do is throw them into drinks. So we can swap our coffee for, you know, a turmeric latte or a green tea, or even dandelion coffee. Dandelion's really nice and bitter, so it does have like a quite similar flavor to coffee. So then we're getting, you know, really nutritional things into our daily routine in a really easy way. And these things start to layer up. You might not notice, you know, full transformation in your health straight away just by changing your mascara, but it's that boiling frog principle, but reversed. So we think about, you know, you put the frog in the pot of hot water and you're slowly turning the heat up until it's too late. It's left the frogs too late to jump out. But what we want to do is start to turn the temperature down. And so what we're trying to do, we start to peel off those layers. And then suddenly, after doing this, you'll, in a few months, you'll be like, oh, actually, you know, I've not felt quite weird and anxious around my period, and it becomes very subtle because you then forget you have those symptoms in the first place. So I would really recommend sort of starting to peel off those layers. And of course, we have lots of other channels of elimination. Detoxification is not just about the liver. So we want to think about our skin, the lungs, our lymphatic system, our kidneys. As you can imagine, this is a big topic in itself, but lovely things that we can start to incorporate as well for that nice self-care too. Dry skin brushing. This is going to support our lymphatic system to start working and clearing that stagnation. We love the castor oil packs. I think I'll talk about them shortly in a bit more detail, but castor oil packs going to be really good for supporting detoxification and even just deep breathing. The action of breathing in actually means our diaphragm is going to start massaging all our internal organs and giving them just a little nourishment. And of course, breathing in itself is going to support our lungs, and it's a way of detoxing. So plus, we haven't even spoken about the benefits for our nervous system and reducing stress. So even if we just start the day by some deep breathing and a lemon water, you've actually done quite a lot already within the first 5 minutes of waking up, supporting your body. So that's super powerful. Okay, so quickly, just thinking about some herbs, because we love the herbs. So I mentioned rosemary. Rosemary is, I could talk a lot about rosemary. Rosemary is a powerful antioxidant. So we hear about antioxidants. Essentially, what it's going to do is protect our body from a form of stress called oxidative stress. So this is there's a whole theory about oxidative stress causing aging. And this is why rosemary is very much included into anti-aging skin creams, because it is such a powerful antioxidant. And you can throw it on grilled foods to protect you from the problems that are released from like high cooking and all that sort of stuff. It's great for the liver. So yeah, we love rosemary, get that in. Another big favorite, very popular herb would be milk thistle. So milk thistle actually is going to support the production of one of our big detoxifying enzymes called glutathione. And then we have the lovely dandelion. I mentioned that already. So dandelion, so great because we can start working with dandelion because we're entering spring, so you'll start seeing it everywhere if you're not seeing it already. And the dandelion root in particular we love for liver function, and it is in our Hello Hormones blend. And also, again, turmeric, really easy to throw in. We can throw it into drinks, we can start cooking with it, and there we go, we've got a really super liver time happening there. So the next thing is our digestion, because once our liver has sort of started detoxifying all our hormones, our bowels then need to eliminate it. So we do need to ensure that our bowels are going regularly. And we're just learning so much more around the gut microbiomes, the little critters that live in our guts, sort of our lovely bacteria, but also so these yeasts and parasites and all the things which may not be as helpful, but they're all playing a role in our health. So we're starting to see how the gut bacteria can start to recirculate estrogen by feeding off it. So if our gut bacteria is more prone to the certain kinds that love eating estrogen, then we're going to see more of a hormonal issue. Another thing that we need is our gut to be healthy to process histamine. So again, high histamine starting with the gut, and then we're also going to get better results with that. So how do we get regular bowel movements? Well, if you are prone to constipation, there are lots of things you can do. Even just the basics. So it's hydration. How much water are you drinking each day? How much movement are you doing? Because we need, just the even process of movement is actually moving and stimulating peristalsis in the bowels. And of course, increasing our veggies. We know that fiber is a good one for getting those bowel movements. So increasing the veggies, the bitter veggies as well, will really help. Things like rocket, kale, all those sorts of things. The less popular ones amongst children, they are very good for stimulating a good bowel movement. And another tip that I love is the squatty potty. Basically, we're not actually designed to sit on a loo when we're to pass a bowel movement. We're actually designed to squat to pass a bowel movement. So our typical UK loo is not going to be supporting the correct posture and the correct ability to eliminate through the bowel. So what we want to do is raise our legs whilst we're on the loo, and you'll find your bowel movements come a lot easier because you're sort of not impairing the ability to pass a stool. So our bowels also very going to be sensitive to what we're eating. So thinking around the standard ones, refined sugar, inflammatory foods, these things are going to be encouraging a not so happy microbiome. So what I always think is, let's add in rather than take away, because the more we add in, the less room we've got for the things that are less helpful. And I think that's what I really like about the, everyone's talking about like the glucose goddess and balancing your blood sugar. What you're doing with those sorts of techniques are you're adding in more protein, more fats, more fiber, which keeps you fuller for longer. And therefore you don't need to focus as much on, oh, I can't eat this. You just, for example, before you have a biscuit or a chocolate bar, have some hummus, because then you've got some protein, you've got some fat, you've got some fiber, especially if you're dipping the old carrot sticks in, such like an old school snack. But still, it's there's a reason why you have that, and you're gonna feel, oh, actually maybe I don't need to eat the whole chocolate cake, for example, because you've then stabilized your blood sugar a bit more. So I think adding in, and then you don't need to think about removing as much. And another thing to add in would be things like our bone broth, cabbage soups, all these lovely things. They actually really help repair our gut lining. So just, we could do a webinar on each one, basically. So just giving you some hopefully helpful tips. And as I said, just even if you just incorporate one of these tips, then you will probably notice a big difference. So some of the herbs we love. So ginger, I mentioned it before because it's very warming and really nice one to actually include as well, because it helps support with reducing inflammation and supporting with digestion. So sage, this is part of the mint family. So all of the mints, whether it's sage, basil, rosemary, lemon balm, etc., that what they do, you'll notice they're quite aromatic. So they've got this nice sort of volatile oils, and they actually stimulate your parasympathetic nervous system. So they're putting you in a state where you're not stressed. So you're in the rest and digest state. And these volatile oils will sort of help increase peristalsis, moving the bowel through your gut. So the mint family, whether it's sage or any of them, they're always going to be good for digestion. We also love the seeds, fennel seed, aniseed, caraway, all these aromatic seeds, the ones that you can just nibble on or just add to hot water, make a tea. They're really going to support digestion. And we also have fennel, which is fabulous as well, because it's beautiful sort of herb, slightly sort of all the seeds are actually going to help with the hormones, because they're all going to be slightly phytoestrogenic. So we love fennel. That's in our Hello Hormones blend. And also elecampane is in that, which is one of my favorite herbs that we don't talk about enough. Elecampane, look at its beautiful yellow sunshine. If you think about yellow, thinking about that solar plexus energy, is the digestive energy. So it's really going to help support our digestion. And it's sort of like antimicrobial, so it's going to help modulate our microbiome. Okay, coming up to 2 minutes, and I've got 10 slides. So let's have a look at this. So what we want to do as well, when I said we want to add in food, we definitely want to add in food, because this is where we get our minerals and our vitamins and all these things that are going to help with our metabolism. And one of the really interesting things would be, I mentioned at the beginning, prostaglandins. So if we have an increase in prostaglandins, this can cause pain. So prostaglandins are actually made from omega-6 fatty acids. And omega-6 is very high in our vegetable oils, and therefore our processed foods, which are going to be really high in vegetable oils. So I always remember one of my clients, she read my newsletter, and I said, okay, let's think about removing seed oils and getting in more omega-3s. And she just did that. And she emailed me being like, my period pain's gone away. And you're like, it's that simple. Sometimes it's just one tweak. So yeah, thinking around these oils that are found in processed foods tends to be, sunflower oil, rapeseed oil, all these sorts of things. If we start to remove them, but again, you can replace with your lovely, whatever it is, coconut oil, olive oil, all that sort of good stuff. And that can start to balance your omega-6 with omega-3. Then another thing that's going to cause pain would be inflammation. So thinking around, okay, not everyone, people will have potential sensitivities to certain foods. So gluten, dairy, soy, all these things could potentially cause inflammation in someone. So the best way to check is to listen to your body. So I would look at some of the common offenders and do a little elimination diet. So you spend sort of 4 weeks or so just pretty much eating just vegetables and meat, and then slowly reintroducing some of these potential inflammatory foods, and then you can sort of see how your body responds. So it's a good thing to do. When I took out, I've always loved dairy, and I'm one of those people that's like, let's heal the body so you can eat everything. But having said that, when I took out dairy and I reintroduced it, I was like, oh, it really does knock me out. So it's only me taking it out for at least 4 weeks, I realized, oh, okay, this is not great. So I'm going to have to work on something so that I can bring it back in a way that works with my body. But in that time of inflammation, what we just want to do is get the symptoms away. So if there is something like dairy or gluten that's causing pain, that's causing issues, take it out, work on the body, and then you can sort of try and work in a way to reintroduce it. And I've mentioned this before, getting in that nutrient dense diet. My favorite acronym is SLOW. We want food to be seasonal, local, organic, and whole foods. So let's think about trying to use that principle and trying to basically, when we're going to the supermarkets, if we buy our food in the supermarkets, just buying one ingredient food. So rather than buying a tomato sauce, you buy a tomato, and then you buy whatever else, you know, your garlic, your olive oil, etc. Rather than, as soon as it's got more than one ingredient, you know there's going to be some level of processing in there. So just keeping it simple takes time, but it's worth it. Okay, so some herbs I love for nourishing, because actually, you know, a lot of herbs are like vegetables, they're just not sold in the supermarket. So nettle is so rich in iron, it's so rich in magnesium, chromium, vitamin K. You know, it is a superfood in itself. Cooks like spinach, but of course, you know, with its sting, it's got a bit of a bad reputation, but it's a very nourishing, nutritious herb. And so I've put it's rich in iodine. Could be, depends where it's grown. Seaweeds are the ones that are rich in iodine, but it is in hormones as well. Yes. And then other things that we probably neglect would be the seaweeds. So they're rich in iodine. They're also a great source of omega-3, so they're going to be anti-inflammatory. Hormones also has oat straw in. So oat straw, I put a lot of iodine. I think I'm really sorry about my slides here. Oat straw, basically what we'll be thinking of, it's going to be really nourishing and nutritious. Also, it's very calming. So I do love oat straw. And finally, burdock. So burdock, you can get more in some of the Asian supermarkets sold as gobo, but really rich in prebiotics, going to really nourish the gut flora. So a lovely herb to work with as well. Okay, so I'm going to leave 10 minutes for the questions, if that's okay, so I can just finish the slides. So I mentioned our adrenals. So we want to slow down the stress, which is easier said than done, of course. But what I'll do is I'll talk about some techniques. And then if you can't manage that, just take some herbs until your life becomes manageable. But everyone's going to have, we always say, meditation. Meditation doesn't work for everyone. Depends on your personality type. Meditation just might not work. So find a thing that does work for you. It could be breath work, it could be massage, it could be art. There is something that will flip you into that rest and digest state. So find the thing that works for you, even if it's just, if you have to pay someone to like do some acupuncture on you so that you are, forced to be without your phone in a room with no stimulation, just someone's leaving you with some needles and they're going to help you calm down. That is so important that you get that on a regular basis until we become the sort of people, because I know what it's like, I have my own business and I'm just like, oh, where do I fit the time in? But you really have to find that way, that therapeutic practice. So castor oil packs are a really nice one, because you're going to have the benefits of castor oil, anti-inflammatory, going to support detoxification, is going to be warming, put them over your womb for period issues. And then also it's going to, again, help you rest. So we love the castor oil packs. Okay, the next thing is we want to actually make our body understand when it is time to switch off. Because a lot of the time at night, we might be in this state of, okay, we're exposed to all this lighting, we're exposed to all this stimulation from TVs, from your phone. It's not really our adrenals' fault that it's still pumping out cortisol, because it's very confused, because typically we would be sitting around the fire and then putting on our bare skin and rolling into bed. So therefore, what we want to do is actually start to realign our body with what's happening in the day. So getting exposure to sunlight in the morning and lunchtime, and reducing artificial light at night. There's so much in this, again, whole nother presentation, but very, very, very helpful. I eventually converted my husband to the blue light blocking glasses. So you can buy these, they've got sort of orange tints and they sort of block out the blue light from the TV and the screens. And he's like, now he won't be without them, because he does feel so much calmer in the evening when he's wearing those glasses. So as soon as he started wearing them, I didn't even have to tell him to wear them. Whereas I have to tell him to do a lot of other things, but he felt the benefit straight away. And for women, how do we balance stress? Our response is tend and befriend. So it's not about rest and digest or fight or flight. We like to tend and befriend, which is what oxytocin does. So we love hugs and we love combing each other's hair and community. Maybe I'm just speaking for myself, but this is really, really important for women to be able to get into, again, a non-stressed way. So we can do that, even hugging yourself. But there are also things like flower essences, lots of things that can help with that. And we have our herbs. So passion flower, very, very lovely. Helps with those circular thoughts. Reishi really helps calming, also really good for before you go to bed. I love motherwort because it sort of gives you that confidence. It's going to strengthen the heart, but it also works on the uterine tissue. So we love motherwort as well for regulating periods. So we're looking at, this is why herbs are great, because you're looking at the root causes, because actually, cortisol is going to upregulate inflammation. So it can cause painful, heavy periods. But so we've got the motherwort to help us get into a more calm state, but the motherwort itself is also going to have an action on painful, heavy periods, not just on that. So this is the thing, unlike pharmaceuticals that just have one mode of action, the herbs work on the whole body. So you're addressing the symptoms and the causes at the same time. So motherwort, we love, that's also in the Hello Hormones blend. So finally, I mentioned this at the very beginning. I'm glad I mentioned it at the beginning because obviously I'm running out of time. So I've given you sort of a little sneak peek into thinking around the energetics. So firstly, I have so many clients where the painful heavy periods are that message to them, because when we do kinesiology, we go into the emotions and it'd be like, what actually is going on? Okay, when I've got a painful heavy period, I can't do anything. I'm just in bed. And that means that I actually can't be the person that I am usually. So why is my body forcing me out of that pattern? Because potentially what I'm doing normally is so stressful that my body's going to break the cycle at least once a month. So there might be a message. Sometimes the symptoms are a message. So that's a really, really important thing. Okay, so honoring yourself, tuning into that can be very important to understand, why is my body beating me up like this? Maybe there's something that we need to change or think about. So as I said, actually regulating periods, again, I've mentioned circadian rhythms, but also tuning in with the full moon, that could be quite helpful. I've also mentioned encouraging that circulation and decreasing stagnation. So cinnamon, ginger, cardamom, all these beautiful warming herbs are going to increase that blood flow and start to tone and support uterine health. So you're going to find periods a lot easier. And this is when I love working with herbs, topically or using them in different ways. So steaming the pelvic area with them, using them in foot baths, so castor oil packs many times, but also just making packs of like chamomile and rose, putting them on your sort of abdomen, so calming and sort of brings warmth as well. You put a hot water bottle on. And yeah, so this is also what we like in terms of bringing the energetics in, because this is what we're getting with the herbs, we're getting the warmth, we're getting that clearing of the stagnation that you just don't necessarily get with a supplement. So, but generally, let's think about some female herbs. We have Vitex, which is in Hello Hormones. So Vitex, really going to be fabulous for regulating menstrual cycles, can really help with PMS, supporting with increasing progesterone, all that lovely stuff. Raspberry leaf. So again, what we tend to see with the painful heavy periods, we're going to see a lot of boggy uterine tissue, whereas raspberry leaf can help tone that. Red clover, very good for our lymphatic system as well. So it's quite cleansing, red clover, and also sort of gentle phytoestrogen. And then finally, when we're tuning in to our feminine, then can't really beat rose for helping with the traumas that are expressed through our body. Rose is one. And of course, it's great for our liver. It's anti-inflammatory. It's very, very, very lovely. So it's just starting to think as well on the different levels of how we can work with these herbs. So in summary, I've given you quite a lot, but you don't need to do it all. just taking small steps can really, really help. So if anything of that resonates, try it, add it in, and see what happens. So that is it.
That's just been so amazing, Izzy. Thank you so much. I mean, considering the amount of knowledge that you've shared, we've only gone 8 minutes over an hour. I think that is absolutely remarkable. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for joining. Next month, we are focused on sleep with the lovely Zoe Phoenix, who's here on the call. So yeah, lots more exciting stuff coming.